All right, good evening, everyone. Let me know if you can hear us. Let me know if there's any sound issues. I want to thank you and welcome you to the Two Guys Talking History show tonight with our special guest and special guest Anthony Vernon. And
Oh,
hi, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
yeah, it's still two guys, despite there being a special guest. But hi, I am Anthony David Vernon. I am an adjunct professor of philosophy at a couple of schools in South Florida. And that's about the gist. Other than that, I like paddleboarding and I like cats. So, those are the kind of the quirky descriptors that often bios throw in it at the end. But yeah, I hope everyone's doing well tonight.
Excellent. So, about a week ago or so, I got an email at the Two Guys business email, which shocked me because normally it's just perfunctory Stream Elements things. Uh, Anthony requested to talk about the rise of AI propaganda, and I've actually been really interested in like synthesizing this thing in my mind for a while about AI and fifth generation warfare and all of that. But the particular prompt you brought up was Obama, the arrest of Obama in AI propaganda that shortly after Donald Trump attempted to distract us all from the fact that he's on the Epstein list by bringing out this strange set of documents that say nothing at all about Obama. So it was
Yeah,
a really interesting thing, I think.
Yeah, and it's certainly part of a sort of repeated process, right? This isn't the first instance of the Trump administration, the White House, or Trump himself using AI propaganda. And this is one of those things through just Trump's usage through the White House, through the American government, right? It's pointing at AI propaganda is here. Now, maybe individuals weren't expecting it to arrive in such a goofy way, but here we are nonetheless, right? We are at the, first stages of, mass AI propaganda in society, right? And this is one of those genies, once that's been let out of the bottle, well, it seems to have unlimited wishes, unlimited prompts, and seems to be nigh impossible to put back in the bottle.
Yeah, and it's been I think, a rising concern of the nature of this for years and the potential, right? Uh, Certainly in media, you can see it years ago where they're thinking, what is the possibilities here? How does this affect how we interact? For example, the TV show Madam Secretary in its sixth season had an episode in which the protagonists were misrepresented by people creating AI propaganda. Like there is like a lot of concern, I think, about how this can go down and how it can be applied to society and how it is affecting our already tenuous and difficult discourse.
Yes, but individuals in that, right, don't recognize that we've hit AI propaganda because there was this assumption that AI propaganda was going to be dangerous, blatantly sort of misrepresenting, but in a believable way, as opposed to shit posting, right?
Right.
This has been stage one, has been the shit posting, which was kind of the unexpected thing, right? To use it to generate a hyper reality, to use it to generate meme fantasies, right? Not even trying to hide the fact that it's really fake, not really even trying to hide the fact that it's hyper reality, right? Using AI propaganda as a tool of meme generation, right? And feeding into people's mimetic desires, which is still effective, right? It is still a worrying form of AI propaganda. Yeah, while the big sort of obvious concern is, oh shoot, someone's made a fake AI video that Xi Jinping is going to invade Taiwan, and he's made the announcement, and he set the order. These other forms of AI propaganda are still nefarious in the sense that they kind of reward people's desire insofar, but they don't arrive at the point of making those desires a reality, right? So, in the case of Obama being arrested, there are many people who want to see Obama arrested. And you see that AI video of Obama being arrested, and what could come into one's mind is like, we're so close, we can get there, we need to do it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. The other one I saw the other week, last week, in between, but you and I started emailing, is I saw Trump put up, and you might have seen it too, put up a picture of the White House on Twitter that is basically encrusted in gold. And it had the caption, "This is the golden era of America." It's kind of like right now, it's almost silly. Um, and it's also remarkable to me how far this technology has come in just the last 2 years. Like, uh, you used to see these pictures and videos of like six fingers and whatnot, and very clearly had some issues. But now it's becoming much closer to a simulacrum, if you will, of being able to create that impression of reality in a way that like before was not necessarily as accurate.
Yes, but in this sort of sense, right, it is really good autocomplete, right? So while, questions of AGI and AI are questionable to say the least, and if it's even a feasible route, but putting that aside, right, as, really skilled autocomplete, right, it's still really good. And so these questions of like, oh, is it AGI or not, distract from the fact that, hey, this really good autocomplete is really good at making simulations that appear as things that are plausible, right? That doesn't
Right.
mean they appear real, but they create a simulated plausibility. And again, right, this is what propaganda does, right? If you watch Red Dawn, you know that the Soviets, or in the newer version, that the North Koreans aren't, going to invade anytime soon, but it creates a plausibility that we have to go, ooh, be wary of the Soviets, be wary of North Korea, right? Be wary of XY boogeyman, right? And AI is really good at generating a boogeyman, depicting your enemy in the worst form possible, and making it more and more as this autocomplete gets better, completing the sort of image that you are trying to prompt it to make.
Yeah, and I guess the concern then becomes now it's Obama, right? And like, given the Trump administration's proclivity for attacking migrants, do you think it's plausible that they could create a AI of ICE agents, for example, raiding a work site, and this could spill over into people choosing to enact violence upon migrant populations?
Well, DHS already used AI propaganda. They did a Ghibli AI of Maria Gonzalez, I believe was her name. And yeah, so they already did one in the Ghibli style. And to me, the thing that's interesting about that one, right, it takes from Miyazaki's style, which is about sort of integration, peacefulness, right? This sort of attempt to belong to the land, right? Like these messages in Ghibli movies are the antithesis of what the AI guys and the Trump administration are building in the world. And so one of the things that's interesting about AI is it's the way that it can sort of twist other memes to push something else. So it's not even just the concerns of, oh, well, here's an AI that looks real. Even things that don't look real, right, can twist prior messaging into new forms. Going into more specifically what you're saying about a fake ICE video, yeah, it can be used to sort of rally individuals, right? There was that one infamous rally in Michigan where Trump was showing individuals, their heads shaved, they're chained, they're being put on planes, and you have the crowd cheering. So yeah, like if you show AI ICE videos, right? Let's say ICE is having trouble catching people in a certain month, which hopefully that's every month, right?
It seems to be this
But
month, actually. They seem to be having some
well,
trouble.
hopefully the number becomes zero. But that aside, using AI could, like, yes, be used to create false images to rile up a base, to get people going see. So yeah, I think you're certainly right, but it's not even just about the stuff that appears real, right? Because even sort of Ghibli AI things can be used to hype up people, to get people into the image, to get people into the idea. It's AI in all of its forms, not just the ones that look realistic, but also the AIs that are intentionally made to look cartoony that still contribute to propaganda.
Yeah, no, I think like it doesn't have to be. It doesn't like yeah, it doesn't have to be real per se. Sorry, that was probably badly phrased, but like it just has to like feel rallying. Like you think
Yes.
about our historical examples, like I not to go there immediately, but the Nuremberg rallies in the 30s in Germany, the production there, this creation of this image of the popularity of Hitler was like a mass staged thing. It got and it like it's an infection almost, right? You see people getting excited, you get excited. Now it's becomes easier and it no longer needs to be bound to reality. It can be built in around this like concept of memes. Um,
But
it creates an ability to just engage with people in a way that they've never been engaged with before, but is very appealing.
yes, but it does shape reality, right? So while an individual video may not correspond to reality, like an individual raid may not have happened, our perceptions do dictate how we enact in the world. A really good example of this, and speaking to a different fascist, is Trujillo, right? Trujillo wanted to present himself as being as white as possible, right? One of the things he tried to do was, separate, Dominicanos from Haitians as much as possible, right? And almost pointing to Dominicanness as being closer to Europeanness and more distant from Haitianness, from Afroness. And in that sort of regard, right, what Trujillo did was cover up his own Haitian ancestry, right? And so one of the things that propaganda tries to do is it tries to cover up hypocrisies. It tries to sell an image, right, that people think is real, and people act as if it is real. And if people act as if it is real, well, their motivations have tangible effects, right? And so it's this sort of thing where you get a bunch of, let's say, AI videos out there, and this is a community that's very important to me, right? In Homestead, Florida, it's like, oh my God, they're raiding this place in home, right? People I care about are scared as a result of these videos. Like, oh my God, like, look, the government posted a video of this place being raided. Don't go here, right? It can, these falsities can create uncertainties and fears, but also can, drive people to commit to action. So I don't want to go into so as far as just to say, oh, this is one detached thing, this is another detached thing. Fictions are realities. They're just realities of a different sort.
Fair. I know. I think that's important to point out is that the way we perceive things is this is I think going back to the Obama thing in particular, because of how, the exact nature of what Tulsi Gabbard is doing, is she's trying to pass off Obama as somehow the architect of Trump being accused of collaborating with Russia. And the idea has been in the right wing circles for years is to claim that Russia is a hoax, Russia Gate, so on, called as a hoax. And obviously, if you go and you read the report that was produced by the special prosecutor, you can see that Trump did meet with Russian agents multiple times during his campaign. We see connections between them exchanging data, that it certainly wasn't a hoax. This idea has become so prevalent that Tulsi Gabbard gets up and she says, Obama did this thing to create this hoax against Trump. And people believe it because they have seen it repeated so often. It's not necessarily what the reality of the situation is, but it's the reality they think it is because of the way the propaganda has worked. So you're absolutely correct, I think.
Yeah, and you're making a great point. That's like AI can make that conspiracy, that idea, more real because it adds to the fiction, right? I mean, in order to add to fiction, you don't need something that's real, right? And so, in that though, right, what ends up happening, and this isn't to say that only conspiratorial people fall for AI, right? And it's not to say that all AI is out of malice. Of course not. But this is to say, in this specific example that you point to well, if you're already down that rabbit hole, AI is just, another shovel that helps you dig deeper.
Yeah, no, nobody is immune to propaganda, right? You see it all the time, particularly, I think, in the brand of people who pretend that they're just debunking propaganda. They are very good at recognizing some propaganda and not others. So, like, there is a lot of a lot of like, what's that old joke? There's a Soviet professor on a plane from Moscow to New York, and he's sitting next to an American, and he's like, "Why are you going to America?" And the professor's like, "I'm going to America to study the effects of propaganda on the American population." And the American goes, "There is no propaganda in America." And the Soviet
Yeah.
professor goes, "Exactly." Um, so
And
no, it's like 100% a problem. I think is that you can definitely create a situation where some people are being led astray by different propaganda and others are being led astray by others. And there's, I guess the biggest concern I have been having over the last couple of years is looking at the way we interact with one another. And if you and I do not necessarily agree on a reality we wish to enact, and we can indulge in a propaganda machine that can create this comforting blanket of ideas that we can believe, how do we come together as a functional society and solve problems, right?
yeah, I mean, I'm definitely in the minority on this one. I think our situation has always been postmodern, and I think the first person to ring the bell on that was Zhuangzi. Very much, kind of making fun of thisness or thatness, and sort of having coherent grand narratives about things. So I think we've always been in the postmodern situation. What I just think has changed is that we aren't in a period of grand narratives. And there's been grand narrative collapse before, right? The collapse of the Roman Empire, got rid of a lot of grand narratives. The death of God, as rung by Nietzsche, right, led to the sort of death of Christianity as a grand narrative in Western Europe. I'm being very Western European here, right? But various dynasties in China can be collapses of certain grand narratives and meaning, and this is especially shown in the Warring States period. So I think our situation is always postmodern. We forget our postmodernness and revolve around the grand narrative just to, ease the pain in a Confucian sense, or just out of happenstance. And then we have stuff that makes us realize, oh wait, that grand narrative, existed due to a lack of inherencies. We go back into postmodernism, the cycle repeats again. But it seems our starting position, at least to me, is the postmodern one and not the, oh, modern into postmodern. It seems, that grand narratives are construed, and really we have micro narratives, but we don't know how to put them all together, and we never have as a species.
Sure, but to a certain extent, like, you take a look at the Roman Empire, which endured for thousands of years, even through periods of fall. Like, obviously, you have a couple times that Rome was sacked, but like, more or less, they exist as a coherent political entity for a couple thousand years. There are changes and ups and downs, but there is a certain amount of the system has an effect that works, right?
Of course.
And we are in a period where we are sitting at basically the death of the American system, right? Uh,
Maybe. I mean,
I
people were saying that in the 60s, the 70s. I think ultimately the Rome thing is not to say that Rome didn't have societies that work, that the Han Dynasty didn't work, or the Tang didn't work, or, the various Indian empires. What is to say there is that what we do is we establish narratives and they're quite useful. So the narrative of biology, right, as apart and separate from the rest of sciences, it's very useful. You can discover things, right? Historiography, as we both know, right,
yes,
creates a lot of useful narratives that can gather you a lot of information. But no science individually, no historiography is going to tell you the full history of that thing. But what ends up happening quite often is that, we pick, narratives to uphold the entire society. This society is built on, this particular dynasty. This, society is built on this grand narrative of a state. This society is built on this religion. And again, it's not to say that there aren't people that counter or not everybody agrees. The problem at hand is that we've always been in a situation in a very Taoist sense where we are unsure of the name of the Tao. We're unsure about like how it all works, how it all fits together. But we, have these like, what, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna say that this is the meaning of our X, Y, and Z.
Sure. No, it is very much a choice to step forward in an uncertainty. I think that defines a lot of cultures. Both, like we talked extensively about empires, but I have been doing two things basically for the past 2 years: Israel and Palestine, and I have been reading about pre-colonial Africa and pre-colonial United States, and I think like there are narratives involved there too. Um, that Native Indigenous American history is fascinating. Like it's a lot of oral stuff, but it's fascinating stuff. Um, and like all of this kind of gets wrapped up in the ability to create uh, these AI narratives. And when I say we're reaching like this critical point for America, we have people actively arguing against fundamental pillars of our law, like due process is a big one. And this, like, I don't know about you, but it concerns me deeply. And I imagine it concerns you
Oh
too.
yeah, it does. We're definitely at a postmodern point for sure.
Yes. And like, it feels uncertain. And for me, at least, the introduction of AI on top of that makes it feel that much more uncertain. Like how what people are going to react to, what they're going to rally to, and what will choose to do. Like Barack Obama is surrounded by security and probably some serious gates and fences. Uh, and Chicago being Chicago, they would probably react poorly to people coming to take him. But not everyone is like to bring back that example of the like Christine Nome did that video where she's in that prison in Venezuela, but it wasn't. It was obviously AI. But like what people are willing to tolerate, like the treatment of people, just there's so much risk inherent to this to me that like I understand the benefits. Like obviously, AI is on the thumbnail today, um, but I also like it makes me feel cautious about embracing the nature of this tool, right?
Yeah, I mean, so maybe this isn't what you're playing at directly, but AI definitely has a lot of postmodern possibilities, right? For better and for worse, right? Um, One of the benefits of postmodernism is to open up the room for narratives and not to be caught in a grand narrative, right? Because if everything has to exist, under the thumb of Hutzapalotl, then, where are the Aztecs going to go other than warfare? If everything has to exist under the gambling of Batista, right? How does, Cuba, which, I mean, it moved on in a very,
Violent way.
problematic way. Huh?
Yes. Envy is political. Hey, I just want to point out that Envy is political in chat has started their own channel about covering Bruno Latour. So go subscribe to that if you have not.
Oh yeah, good to bring in Latour here, right? Because again, it's this
I was
it's
afraid
this
that was
sense
going to
though.
happen. Go ahead.
No, I love Latour. Like I'm unorthodox, and I base my definitions of the modern and the postmodern off Latour. So they're a little unorthodox, so they're not universal. But um, yeah, I think. Oh yeah, going back, like Batista's, sort of like mafia government, like and racist government. Aha, this is the only way. This is going to exist. This is just what we do, right? So it's great to have technologies that could potentially be disruptors to that. But what often happens is that systems of power will find means to incorporate new technologies. This isn't an original take. This isn't anything new, obviously. But um, as a take or just as a system. But one of the things we can see with AI, despite its extreme postmodern possibilities, is how it can often be a tool of homogeneity. And I'm glad you brought up Native Americans, Indigenous Americans, Indian Americans, because I spent a lot of time in Oklahoma and New Mexico, two states that happen to have high populations of Indigenous individuals. And in that though, it was an opportunity to learn about the subtleties of cultures, right? To learn about the subtleties of people, about various different, pueblos and various different, um, people groups. And in that though, right, you see a non-homogeneity when you actually examine, indigenous individuals. However, right, they get homogenized under the Washington football team's old slur of a name, right? And this is something when I talk to my students about Native American philosophy, right? It's like, well, there's massive differences within North America, let alone North and South America. Specifically, the example I use is the Aztec view of death versus the Zuni. But again, AI is not trained or programmed on these these very often, right? You ask AI for an image of an indigenous American, Native American, etc., it's going to give you the homogenized stereotypical image because AI works based off what's fed to it the most. So while AI has all these postmodern possibilities, it also has the extreme likelihood of repropagating old stereotypes, old homogeneities that one aren't true and two can often be quite harmful.
Well, I think it actually gets worse, right? For example, I use Canva because I am useless at Photoshop and Paint. Uh, I use Canva for all the art for the channel, and they have an AI tool. And out of curiosity to do some stuff for the Fight the Empire, I asked it to produce a picture of a Mexica, uh, and it gave me someone who looks distinctly Asian. Like it had no capacity to recognize these Hamad, like it completely just missed the mark. So like I think the problem is we have, and you and I were talking about this before stream, the orthodoxy of certain sets of information, particularly in historiography. It only produces information based on what's put into it. And so we have huge subsets of multiple populations that do not regularly get to talk in like give their story and put their story. And so like when it comes time to train one of these models, they aren't included even if they are important. And that's a problem that we have not just in AI research, but a problem broadly across academia, right? It's a
Yeah,
huge
it's,
issue.
yeah, it's also a problem of context, right? So a good example of this is the Seminole tribe, right? Let's say if I type in, give me a Seminole individual, right? It very likely may give you a Florida State fan, right? It may give you the
Yes.
context of the football team rather than the displaced tribe that's displaced between Florida and Oklahoma. And so in that too, right? Like one of the things that AI can be pretty bad at is context. If and that's why you have all these people on YouTube being like the magical prompt, the perfect prompt, right? Because it's not that there's any magic or that whole very scary recent trend that some people think their AIs are gods or demigods, but more along the lines of that specificity gives context, which gives predictive capability. However, even with all of that, there are still certain homogeneities, as you point out very well, because using the example of like a lot of the indigenous tribes of Alaska, right, which have very sparse in population, often have no written records, very limited oral records in languages that aren't translated or well translated. I think Tlingit would be a good example of this. Um, how much Tlingit representation is there going to be on AI? And next to none in a relative scale is unsurprising, but still marginalizing.
No, absolutely. Speaking of the Seminoles, by the way, I'm going to harp on I'm going to harp on antebellum history pre-Civil War again. The Seminoles are very unpopular in the South. because they would take in runaway slaves and protect them. One of the tribes to definitely look at if you are looking at antebellum history. Very interesting. Um, sorry, I got
No, go
sidetracked.
off. I again, fellow historian here.
Yeah,
I mean, even just the lost cause and the way that, like, again, the Civil War, like the fact that we've already had this tendency as a species to propagandize, to limit information into the lost cause, or not look at the subtleties of, Native Americans who held slave, Native Americans who, were for abolition, Creoles who were themselves enslaved, or Creoles who were slave owners, right? These subtleties, are, lost, by something like, AI that's looking for quickness, repeatability, convenience. And these are things that, society, at least, largely in the West, already does. And AI just makes that machine, you know, do it more quote unquote efficiently. But sometimes efficiency can leave out details, right? If I don't carefully grade my students, right, the notes and commentary, right, are going to be very vague. They're going to be very general. They're not going to know, certain areas. But it would be efficient, right? If I just take, oh, I'm just going to look very quickly, write one sentence, look very quickly, write one sentence. Extremely efficient, but that's not helping anyone with the details they may need.
no, absolutely. Sorry, I'm checking something. No,
No problem.
the problem I think comes when we like we don't get like I harp on this all the time here is context as one of the five C's of historical thinking, because context is the most often one I see lacking in a lot of people's historical content. Is they miss these points of context in favor of those grand narratives that we were talking about earlier, right? What a faultist loves his grand narratives. They're all bullshit, but he loves them. Uh, you have a you you have a tool now that makes that easier, right? I think Sunday was talking about uh, a video of Michael Burns, and he's like, "Yeah, this is AI written." I'm like, "It very well might be." So you have these tools now that make it so easy to not do the work, as so to speak, and not engage with the content in the same way. And
Or not engage with the context, right? Because
yes,
context and content are engagements. Obviously, we can't have direct engagement with context, but if you take time to engage with content in a given context, you can at least get closer to it. And that's one of the things that, like, AI is not focused on, because why would it be? What AI is trying to do is, I give machine this prompt. Machine is trying to autocomplete this prompt for me right now, right? The AI context is always the context of the user, and it's trying to fulfill the request of the given user in its time. And this is why AI hallucination is so common, right? Because it's not worried about the context of information. It is simply worried about the context of the prompt in isolation of everything else, right? So this was, I studied under a very Heideggerian guy, and, he's talking about, oh, Heidegger, who's not super obscure, but somewhat obscure compared to many other thinkers, right?
well, he made the
You
Monty
know,
Python drinking song.
he did, and the soccer match.
Yes,
But
and the soccer match.
I say for, like, the relative public, right? If you're in
Yes,
philosophy, obviously Heidegger is well known, like, and of course. But if you're just like a layman, that's more what I mean, right?
fair enough. Sorry, I couldn't help
And that's
myself.
not an insult, because not everyone has to be a nerd about this stuff. Certainly, my Novia is not, and I'm glad she still loves me despite my nerding out over overthinking. But yeah, like, Heidegger is popular enough where it's like you can know the mistakes, but there could still be stuff, like, made up that your average person doesn't know, your average programmer doesn't know. And so, it's very easy for me to just, like, ask, like, hey, explain, Dasein to me, explain being towards death, explain Heidegger's poetics to me. This is where it was the worst, right? And give me some sources. And especially on the Heidegger and poetry one, the aspect of Heidegger I study the most, it was the worst at, like, generating sources. And so, yeah, there is that sort of thing where it's like that, the less data that something has, it's still trying to fulfill the request, and it never worries about context, because it's not a worrying thing. It's not something that has that capability. And so, yeah, it's that sort of sense of that not only is there the issue of like homogeneity and the lack of information put in, it's also this sort of concern of that, like, even if someone's trying to act in honesty with the AI, they may still get misled. There may still be misconceptions that form. There may be even forms of accidental propaganda that emerge.
Yeah. Uh, it you see that a lot, I think, already in the kind of rise of people who think they can do someone else's job, right? There was a Mother Jones piece a couple months back. Breaking news, it said, and recently enslaved. They're talking about the 1865, right? So I don't know how that qualifies. We're not given their 40 acres and a mule, basically. Like, no one is talking about this, and a whole bunch of American historians who've been talking about it extensively are like, wait, what?
It's
There
even in
is,
Kendrick Lamar songs. Like
yes,
like this is definitely talked about.
yeah, there's a certain stream of that. Like, you get it knows what it knows, and like people have always tried to capitalize on the hidden truth thing. Popular history does it all the time. It drives me nutty. Uh, but yeah, they try to capitalize on the hidden truth thing, and AI can really easily feed into that concept. And like it's very easy to like not. It's very easy to think you've got it when you read these AI prompts and they spit something out, and like you have no idea if you haven't engaged extensively with the topic whether or not what you're reading is accurate.
Yeah. I mean, let's use someone like actually a little more obscure, although still relatively popular. But like Guattari's work doesn't have really much English translation. And so, you could ask, hey, give me this specific aspect of Guattari. And, it's just like, again, it's just going to throw things out. But again, I think that sort of sense of throwing things out, as you point out, is not like new for the species. And this might be a very kind of weird example, but I mean, look at Michael Bay movies, right? Look at the way in which Michael Bay is very good at curating a specific type of image of America, a specific image of a cop. And it's not just the fact that that is a replicable wow, why am I having trouble saying repeated image? I'm just going to say repeated to ease my mouth. Um, but it's also the fact that AI can also bolster these traditional forms of propaganda, right? So as you point out, we already have these systems, we already have these tendencies to do certain things, but right, like the connection between AI and cinema, a more traditional form of propaganda, is not unfounded, right? AI and supporting digital art and posters, right? Like, of course, right? So it's not just the concern of AI in of itself making up things, hallucinating, but it's also the way that it can be coincided with. So yes, you're saying that a lot of people use AI in an ignorant way, but individuals who have skillful use in AI that can use it at a Hollywood level, right, can also spread danger and misinformation. And in some sense, it may be just as dangerous to know the tool. So it's that sense of like the intent and the usage, the ignorance and the lack of ignorance, right? These things kind of juggle with each other. But for me, that's another kind of big concern, is the way that um, even individuals with knowledge can still take part in spreading propaganda, and individuals with knowledge can bolster old school, quote unquote, forms of propaganda with AI.
Yeah. And like, to kind of piggyback or maybe ask a direct question, you are broadly supportive of AI as a tool, right? Um, do you think we should develop some kind of set of safeguards around its use for people to not be misinformed? Or is that even possible at this point, in your opinion?
I mean, I am someone, again, who's very aware that like misinformation has been a thing just in the history of humanity, right? The history of conspiracy is not brand new. A lot of people act like, conspiracies right here, right now. But let's be real, right? Like the history of, of the Black Plague is very much marked by conspiracy, right? It's about
Exactly.
Christians who
Yes.
didn't pay to, Muslim and Jewish traditions of cleanliness, but came up with, demonic conspiracies, right? You have Locke and Hegel and Kant making up things about Native Americans, right? You
Or
have, I mean,
black
the
people.
whole history. Well, I was just about to say the whole history of sub-Saharan Africa as a place without civilization or technology is a conspiracy, right? We only need to look to, Great Zimbabwe in 2 seconds, right? And boom, we're already done, right?
Yes.
So that, and obviously more than just that, but, all that aside, what we have is this problem always occurring. So, I do think that, maybe certain regulations could catch certain people. But these things are so contextual. People are going to find workarounds. People are going to get access to forbidden text. People are going to get access to newspapers and like tabloids. People are going to get access to obscure films, right? So I don't know if regulation can be helpful in that sort of sense of do we quell misinformation, because I think that's just part of being human, right? I just think that's part of our postmodern condition that we just all are in, even if we're not directly acknowledging it through a narrative. Obviously, there's certain contexts where things can be more like regulated. I mean, clearly the administration is trying to do this with the regulation of like woke AI, but typically the way you regulate AI is to alter the model, right? We see this with Elon Musk most prominently, where 1 week his model is, a mecha, Nazi, and the next week it is an AI anime girl. So I guess for me though, I'm not trying to be doomeristic about this. I'm not saying there's no hope. Um, what I guess am trying to say is that we aren't fighting in a new battle. We're just fighting the same battle, but with different tools. That same sort of battle of how do we make sure people have information that corresponds to reality versus information that does not.
Stun guns everywhere. Sorry. No, I did I looked at the Grok thing and I checked on it after the fact, after the Mecha Hitler, because I was actually indisposed for that day in the hospital with
Oh, I
this.
hope you're feeling better.
Oh, it's the same crap as normal. But anyway,
Mm.
the problem I came up with almost immediately is that they fixed it because I asked it to was Hitler reprehensible? It's like yes, Hitler was reprehensible. Like okay, they seem to have fixed that. Um, yeah, it changes quick. It can change quick when they change those inputs. But I hope they keep this one because I asked this one what historical figure I most like, and it said Voltaire, and I'm like, I'll take it.
But here's the thing, right? I think one of the other things that's unique about AI and its propagation, and a little bit with social media also, although it's more easily uh, the case that users can manipulate AI models than other previous algorithms. So, there is, and I see this with a lot of my students, curating their TikToks, right? I talk about this all the time, making sure their algorithms are perfect. I should say all the time, but I talk about TikTok, a couple times because, it's modern and relevant. But in that sort of sense, at least in my technology lecture, talking about how, people curate their algorithm. And so, there are things that people can do to play with these systems, and this is more so true for AI even than like TikTok's algorithm, definitely more so true than Facebook's algorithm. But again, like there is this sort of issue at hand that you have the actual machines, be it software machines or physical machines that are attuned a certain way. And until the one with the keys is forced to turn the dials in a different direction, right? One has to be self-investigatory. One has to use multiple tools. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be public pressure, right? That doesn't mean, for example, that the AI pornography law wasn't good. So what that law shows is that, yes, regulations can be done. And I'm not saying there aren't good ones or good options. But I'm not going to sit here as a non-lawmaker, right, with no access to any lobbyists and go, this is what we, should do, because there's actually many sort of, clear answers, right? There are answers in terms of like, hey, make sure that AI companies, pay artists. Hey, make sure that AI companies, have more agents for more fact checking, right? Make sure, AI companies, don't create images like this, right? There's regulations that can be done that can limit, not fully solve these things, but the more philosophical issue at hand is, in a world where this is not happening, where AI is being deregulated, and that seems to be the path moving forward. How do we respond to that without the levers of power, without the direct levers of power? And, I mean, there are many routes one can go that are valid there, but at the end of the day, I think that then becomes upon individuals and collectives to decide how they want to combat these sorts of systems, right? If you're the type person that's personally reside, I'm just not going to use it, whatever, right? If you're someone that's going to use it and like try to mess with the algorithm, that's on you, right? If you're someone that's going to do property damage, right, wants to go after AI facilities, right, that is someone else's prerogative. So again, you always have a choice in life of what to do, and sort of these countermeasures don't have to purely be within the law also. But I think and I know I'm going on for a while here, right? The question you asked was big and multifaceted.
No.
And to me, I rather, in my philosophical position, right, because there's so many things one can focus on, is focus on the response to deregulation. That's to me the area I'm more depth in, more versed in, and have a better answer on, like showing the indicative warning signs rather than point to which solution's objectively the best, because I don't think there is an objectively best solution to AI, right? There are some validities in the Luddite arguments. There are even some validities in a, sort of accelerationist form, especially when it comes to individuals with disabilities, a community I care very deeply and personally about. So, yeah, it's a complicated thing for sure.
Yeah, no worries. I'm perfectly happy to let guests go. I do have to mention that we must not endorse any form of going out and breaking people's property.
Oh, of course not.
YouTube gets antsy about that. Don't do it. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, for sure. That's other people's prerogative. I'm
Yes.
personally a pacifist in all forms.
Just don't do it. Whatever your feelings may be. Also, data centers are dangerous. Like electric wise, I used to work for an electric company, and like our approach to powering data centers was to throw the line over and let them deal with it and not get involved in the liability.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know.
Yes, like they run the power requirements are massive, and therefore they have very high voltage lines running to them. If you get stuck in one of those things and you touch the wrong thing, you're gonna turn into fried chicken.
don't
Electricity's
don't
no
don't
joke.
become don't become fried chicken. Fried chicken is as a vegetarian, I don't like fried chicken either. So no fried chicken, no violence.
Yes, don't mess with crap you don't understand. Of so
But
many
here we are
stories.
with AI, many people messing with crap they don't understand, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people want the AI that they don't understand. And that doesn't mean it doesn't benefit individuals. It has been extraordinarily amazing for individuals with various vision impairments, from, total blindness to, just, obviously just general vision impairments. It can be useful for individuals who are deaf, right? Like, these AI systems have better potential for translation, right? To bridge those barriers. So again, right? Like and this is where you're getting at. Yes, I think, for me, I ideally want to see AI more so pushed, as a limited tool for individuals with disabilities and helping out in medical environments, right? I think the sort of stuff, that doesn't mean that it should be shut off from the text versions or the image video versions. Like, maybe, I don't know. It's very tough there. It's like, do we only allow certain industries to have access to these things? But again, the genie is out of the bottle, right? And closing that genie is not going to happen. So we have these massive benefits for individuals with disabilities, while anyone can make their own version of Obama getting arrested by the FBI.
Fair. Yeah, I know. It's not like that's a big question. It's a lot to put on anyone. Um, it is, I think, there is a part of me that is always like reaching for a version like of truth, even though I understand inherently that that's not a thing that can be. So I guess my approach and my feelings on this, on AI and the social media in general, particularly you brought up the fact that people have like curate their algorithm, and like there is an interaction there, right? Um, you are looking for content that you want to see, and you reinforce that content and it delivers more of it to you, but there are people on the other end creating that content, right? So there's an interaction there. um like all of this, like it's a weird way to interact for me, and it's a weird way to engage with the world, and it's a I think anxiety inducing on a certain level for me, because I want to be able to I want to be able to say to a person, uh, this is what we think. This is what I think is real, and that to have them like have a frame of reference to see that, and like maybe it's because I'm a content creator and I spend too much time online, but it's hard to see that happening, right? Hey, Maya.
Well, I mean, it's literally dehumanizing, right? In its most literal sense, right? There's no human connection there, and we can see how harmful dehumanization processes are onto various communities, right? Like there's a long history of individuals who have been dehumanized in various contexts, be it the Uyghurs in China right now, be it the Palestinians in Gaza right now, be it indigenous Americans, be it African peoples in the Atlantic slave trade and the Indian Ocean slave trade, and in that right sort of schema of dehumanization, right, there was always the challenge on the other side of people arguing like, well, are they really unhuman? Are they really lacking their humanity? And in a sense, right, we have these sort of dual traits within ourselves as a species, where we're both very reticent at seeing faces and objects, right? We're very ready to add on human qualities and characteristics onto people, but through the history of various people, almost especially including individuals with disabilities, we're also very ready to dehumanize. So we have these sort of mixed tendencies. And in a sort of sense, right, what AI definitely propagates is a sense of dehumanization, because it literally removes humans from tons of processes, and it takes up time away from people that they would otherwise use to interact with fellow people, right? And this isn't new, right? Social media does this also. But you have the example of individuals who have like AI wives, and individuals who spend inordinate hours of their days on these LLMs. But at the same time, the quality to humanize creates this sort of system where people are then humanizing their AIs, right? As once again with the AI wife. And so, yeah, one of the things I think you're very right about is that this can contribute to not only a history of dehumanization, which is very concerning because that always comes with, violence and, othering and concentration camps and, these sorts of genocidal matters included. But, also a misappropriation of humanization is already occurring, right? And so this humanization of AI, while there is a dehumanization of indigenous individuals, immigrants, individuals with disabilities, etc., of the sort.
No, exactly. And then there has been the other flip side of people being dehumanized by these learning models and deciding to harm themselves. Um, it's there's so much. It like this is kind of sitting on the preface, the prefaces of a massive shift, I think, for us. And AI is kind of very much part of that. Um, like the dehumanizing nature of social media is isolating, and these learning language models can feel, at the very least, like connection, and that's kind of, I feel, risky overall.
Yeah, I mean, AI is certainly the most impactful social technology since social media, and I mean, we can see the effects that social media has had on the population. Of course, there are good moments, right? Like great cat videos to share, businesses that have opened up, people have made friends with people they otherwise would not have. But I think with AI, it seems more blatantly obvious that um, certain positive connections just aren't possible, right? Even in the movie Her, right? The main character has to get physical hardware in order to interact with their AI love in the way that they, want to. And even then, there's still like, an emptiness and hollowness, throughout that movie. And I mean, that movie was so prescient at the time and got so much right because one of the things that that movie does, right? It doesn't spell an AI apocalypse like Terminator does. It shows that like individuals can start personalizing these things and the way that like while it's digitized you're still interacting with the world, you still have these obligations. And so yeah, what it's going to do more likely than be AGI and lead to everyone nuking each other or some utopias in that like 2027 project, more likely thing, and because we can already see it, is the sort of sense in which the interpersonal for many individuals is dramatically altered.
Yeah, it is. It's tricky. It is. I don't know. That part I find disturbing.
But we want it, right?
Yeah.
In some sense,
I
we want it.
guess. I guess we do, but like, do we want it, or do we want something else and are taking that as the substitute? Like, if it feels like I can't connect with people actually, and I turn to a learning language model, do I really want the learning language model, or am I substituting that model for something I actually desire?
You know, it, desire, can be a substitute in a sense, right? When we go, oh, I want a red Mercedes, but I will take a red Mazda. But, in some sort of sense, right, while one may have wanted the red Mercedes, right, ultimately the red Mercedes is both the symbol of, something, but it has actual enactments. So, yes, we can have sort of diminished desires, right? I think this is something that um, Lacan doesn't account for super well in his structure of the whole of desire. But at the same time, right, the red Mazda is still going to fulfill something. And so, one of the things that AI offers, while it may not offer a desire that's as rich, it may offer a desire that's more constant, more affirming, which one could then realize is the desire that they wanted, right? I think that's one of the other structures of desire for sure, is that like we don't always know what we desire until it comes before us.
that we've engaged with it. That's fair. Let's see. Where am I? Okay. We are getting to that point. We're going to start closing out the show. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I think the kind of one thought that I want to kind of share in regards to the wanting of AI, right? I don't necessarily mean it from you know individual by individual, but as a mass society, we seem to um, want some sort of structures of power, right? And what AI offers is the power of convenience par excellence, right? And so in this, right, AI points to the structure of letting ourselves getting controlled by convenience. But again, what convenience does not care about always is quality or sort of the context, right? It's just like, hey, you're feeling this way right now. Let's give it to you. And what we're going to see in regards to propaganda, especially in a context where we see fascism exist in the most economically dominant nation in the world, and a nation that's using its economic power to propagate this sort of stuff is a sort of propagation of having power imposed upon, right? Don't worry about learning. Chat GPT it. Don't worry about, the creative thinking yourself. Don't worry about, graphic design. And I say graphic design because I have a good friend that wants to study graphic design, but now he uses AI for a ton of projects, right? And so it's this offloading of ourselves. And we think about it as an offloading of ourselves onto AI, but really it's offloading ourselves onto power, right? We are letting ourselves be driven by systems of power, not necessarily just offloading our cognition onto AI. Because when we offload our cognition, right, the AI is not thinking, the AI is not motivating, and so who really is kind of pulling the brain? And this isn't, some sort of like, it's one group in particular, but it's more when you offload yourself, you're more easily to be swayed by all systems of power, be it governments, be it media figures, be it familial authorities, be it religious authorities, right? The offloading of our capacities opens ourselves to be manipulated by all systems and forces of power. And we seem to often want to have power pushed upon us.
I'd actually tend to agree that people do look for systems and the comfort of systems at the very least as a stabilizing force. Oh yeah, he knows it's time. The dog is ready. All right.
the,
Yeah, he is.
the dog is like, I know it's over. He's bad to the bone right now. He knows that it is time
Yeah,
to rock
it's
out.
time to go play. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for contacting us, and I want to thank you for coming on tonight,
Yeah,
Dave Anthony. And
love reaching out to people and having conversations, right? Some people are like, oh, I don't want to. What? Who cares, right? I'm happy to reach out with people who, definitely know their stuff and are intelligent and engaged like yourself. And yeah, it's always good to do stuff like this.
well, I appreciate that. You are hanging out mostly in the Quarantine Collective, I understand. Brooks's Discord and YouTube channel, where they discuss. I think he's basically currently engaged in trying to do a simplified telling of dialectalism. So good luck to him on that. uh, but yeah, and they have readings all the time on various philosophers. So if you haven't, go check that out. The Quarantine Collective on YouTube. There should be a link in their description. And I hang out in the cathedral and on my own Discord. And upcoming stuff. Sunday, me and Hetman have to have a conversation about Israel and Ukraine with all of you. It'll be interesting because Hetman has finally turned the page on it being a genocide and believes, thank God, uh upcoming other stuff in couple Sundays, 3-ish Sundays. I'll be on Maya Adkins show Bad Science Sunday, where I'm sure she'll pick a topic that will surely torture both me and Dr. Tapioca Weasel, and I am plan to invoke magnets. And with that, I want to thank everybody for coming out and hope you have a good night.
Thanks, you all.